Welcome to rSlash Askreddit, where people answer the question, when did your instincts scream, leave now? And what did you later find out that you avoided? Our next reply is from Royal Bicycle. I went to sleep for an extra shift that I picked up earlier than normal. One of my really good friends pushed and pushed for me to go with him to a party. I couldn't bring myself to have fun instead of getting sleep before a 12-hour shift. Turns out he was planning to murder-suicide us. He wrecked his car into a tree right after leaving the party as his way out of this world. He survived, and his dad found notebooks and poems about how he had planned all this out. And this was his way of us living in the afterlife as bros. We stopped talking after. Yeah, kind of a relationship killer, attempted murder and all. Also, beneath that, we have a similar story from Devil's Advocate. I was out on the road at midnight being driven around by a friend. Suddenly, he says, "Watch this," and moved his car to straddle the center line of a 4-lane highway and stays there, accelerating over a blind hill, half in one lane and half into the lane going the opposite direction. There were 4 of us in the car. The other 3 were all yelling, "Stop, stop!" "Ha ha," he said as he roared over the top of the hill. "There was nothing coming the other way." "But what if there was?" I asked. "But there wasn't. But there might have been. But there wasn't." I never got in a car with him again and stopped being his friend. Patrick, you idiot. Our next reply is from Honey Badger. Not me, but my husband. He used to work for a delivery company. He had an unshakable feeling one morning to a point that he couldn't bring himself to go into work. He just kept saying something was off, and he was going to trust his gut. The guy who covered his shift delivered to a house where he got attacked by 2 dogs, and dispatch didn't pick up on the fact that his vehicle hadn't moved until 6 hours later. No one knew he was there, and by the time anyone came out to check on the guy, he was too far gone to be able to save. I still think about that. I feel so incredibly bad for the guy and his family. At the same time, I'm beyond grateful that my husband didn't go to work that day. It's a double-edged sword thinking about it from a moral standpoint. My husband quit that company the next day after they sent out a reminder email to the drivers about what happened, and it very heartlessly was, "Woof woof, remember to be mindful about our furry customers. They don't always know that we're bringing them good things." I wish I was joking. Beneath that, someone links the actual news article, and surprise, surprise, it was Amazon. Our next reply is from AK Bear Mace. I was at a party, and this guy pushed me up against a wall. He swore it was a joke, but I said, nah, I'm out. I'd already had bad vibes off him all night and called my boyfriend. All of my friends were at the party, and they didn't want to leave. And I asked him to pick me up because I was drunk. A week later, that guy was arrested for sexual assault. Beneath that, Rainbow Twinkie says, Schrodinger's douchebag. It's only a joke if you stand up for yourself. Our next reply is from Dubious Devil. I was living in my parents' apartment and they were both asleep. They both take medication to sleep, so they were out. I was about to go to sleep as well, so I turned my light off, but something told me to open my door. So I did, and I looked out into the hallway and saw flickering lights on the wall. I thought, that's weird, and almost ignored it, but instead I decided to check it out. Turns out, my mom put a candle in a plastic cup on top of an antique dresser. Of course, it started a fire. The flames were about 2 feet high, and the living room was filled with smoke already. Luckily, I was able to put it out and wake my parents to air out the apartment. I think to myself sometimes that if I decided to just go to sleep, me and my parents both would have probably died to a house fire. Always trust your guts. Also, we have an interesting observation from Big Freeze beneath that. What's the dumbest thing you ever did? It only takes one thoughtless moment in a whole lifetime to mess everything up. For context, the commenters are talking about how dumb it is to put a candle in a plastic cup, and the answer is extremely dumb. Our next reply is from Siberian Peach Pie. One night, I was waiting for the train when 4 guys walked up, and I immediately got a bad vibe from them. I've been robbed once before on the train, and their demeanor reminded me of the guys who robbed me. Like, they were sizing me up, and they were excited about it. I stood there for a couple more minutes reading my book and trying to look casual, then walked probably 3 or 4 car lengths down the platform. They stayed where they were, but kept looking at me. When the train pulled up, I went to get in the front door of the car, glanced behind me, and saw them running down the platform towards me. I got in the car and made my way to the back doors at the opposite end. A few seconds later, the 4 guys burst through the front doors and started looking around. I slipped out the back doors right as they were closing, before the guys spotted me. So I ended up safe on the platform while they were stuck on the train as it pulled away. When they looked out the window and saw me, they looked furious. I booked it out of the station and took the bus instead. The next day, there was a news story that someone was robbed at knife point at the next stop right around that time by 4 men who fit the description of the men I encountered. I'm so glad I listened to my gut and got out of that situation. In hindsight, it all happened so fast, and it's crazy that I reacted in exactly the right way to get myself to safety. Beneath that, a similar story from Himmy Little Chickadee. Something similar happened to me, but it was one guy who honestly looked mentally ill to me. I thought that he was following me on the subway station, so when the train pulled up, I stood on the platform while everyone else boarded the train, and so did he. When the bell rang to signal the train doors closing, I stepped onto the train, and when the doors closed with me on the train and him still on the platform, he was furious and slammed his hands against the doors. The conductor must have seen, because the train stopped like they were going to reopen the doors, but thankfully they didn't. Jesus, that was scary. I have no idea who that guy was and never saw him again, fortunately. Our next reply is from Snap Biscuits. My mom had something like this. It was back in 2003 when I was 12 and my sister was 10. My mom and dad were planning on a date night and they were going to have us kids go stay with our grandma and great-grandma for the night. Mom said that she changed her mind last minute and instead they rescheduled and we all stayed home. My grandma's house burned down that night, killing my great-grandma and severely injuring grandma and one of my uncles. Had my sister and I been there, we would have likely been in the same room with great-grandma or grandma, and one or both of us would have died. Then a similar story from Punjin. Oh man, that's so awful about your family members. My aunt has a really similar story. She was supposed to go to a slumber party when she was little, but decided last minute that she didn't want to go. The house burned down, and the 2 twin girls she'd been going to stay with died. Their parents had put burglar bars on the windows, so the girls got trapped and couldn't get out. Their bodies were found in the bathtub. I guess the safest location they could get to. Super effing dark. And another similar story from Rare Vibes. My mom had one of those gut instinct moments with my sister, just not a leave now one. My parents had gone on a date and left my 5-year-old sister with a babysitter, all normal stuff. When they got home, my mom peeked in at my sister sleeping and whispered goodnight. My sister didn't respond, which of course she shouldn't as she was asleep. But my mom just felt something was off and went to bother her. My sister was completely unresponsive and they had to rush her to the emergency room. My sister was on meds for some major psychiatric issues. My parents had given her meds before they left, but she told the babysitter she hadn't taken them yet, so the babysitter gave her a second dose. If my mom hadn't double-checked and followed her gut instinct, my sister would have died from the overdose. Our next reply is from Vernash. Okay, a little less dark than most of the comments here, but I thought I'd share. I went to the zoo with some friends and my girlfriend. There was this huge bird cage, I forget the word, where you could walk in and see all the little colorful birds. As we were walking, we noticed a dispenser where you could buy some seeds and sugary water to feed the birds. So we did, all fun and games, until my gut told me we had to leave. I took my girlfriend's hand and we made our exit. And 2 minutes later, so did my friends, who were now covered in bird poo. Alright, we could use a slight breather amidst all these horror stories. Our next reply is from Orlando Nemo. Years ago, I was hanging out with a couple of friends in the street, and we had the idea to go to a certain club during the night. When we finally decided to start walking towards it, I got a strange gut feeling about it that I couldn't really understand or shake off. I told my friends that I wasn't feeling like clubbing that night, but that they could go on without me. My friends tried to convince me to go for a bit, but I refused. They gave up and said that we could rather hang out at a friend's house. Later that same night, while we were still hanging out, the news reported that there was a shootout at the club, apparently gang-related, and there were bystanders critically wounded by stray bullets. I remember my friends looking at me with this pale look while I was also very moved by this. I'd never experienced something of this sort. Neither something like that has ever repeated. I'm thankful that I listened to this feeling and that my friends decided to go with me somewhere else. Who knows what could have happened? Well, OP, I don't know if you're out of the woods yet, because this is exactly the plot to Final Destination. Our next reply is from Goofy Witch. Not me, but my dog. I was having a little after the bar party at my apartment that was right next door. Somehow, in a drunken shuffle, my friend disappeared and I was left with this dude I didn't know. He was being nice and we were chatting while waiting for the others to come back. I offered him a drink and got one myself as well. I thought he seemed odd, so I was texting my friends to hurry up. But then my sweet, timid, but large dog started barking and growling at this man like I'd never heard before or since. I told the guy to get the F out. And when he got irritated, I said, if the dog says you're out, you get out. He tried to argue, and I had to shout him out. 10 minutes later, I hit the floor and crawled to the bathroom to puke. I slept for ages. I never puke when I drink, and I never get that drunk. I thought that I'd had my drink in my sight the whole night, but I can only assume he slipped me something. My dog was 4 at the time and is now 11. I'm so glad I listened because his instincts definitely saved me from something awful. This reminds me of the medical dogs who will alert the owner when they're acting suspicious or strange because of some sort of medical issue, which the owner themselves might not even be aware of. So I'm guessing that's probably what the dog picked up on. Our next reply is from Eclectic Introvert. I was taking the Southbound Red in Chicago during wintertime a few years ago, and 3 people wearing balaclavas entered my car, which was already pretty full. 2 guys were standing in front of one exit, and the other guy was standing in front of the other. I saw them scan the people in the car in my peripheral vision. Then, the guy standing alone looked over at the other 2 and gave them an okay nod. I felt like something was about to go down, so I got off at the next stop and walked the rest of the way home. About 10 minutes later, I got a ping from the Citizen app saying something along the lines of, robbery/shooting at the next station. I passed the next station on the walk back and saw tons of cop cars along with an ambulance parked at the entrance. Our next reply is from Dark Moonstruck. I used to be an altar server for the church that the foster family I was with at the time attended. Catholic, real strict, small rural ranching town. The priest that had been there basically forever passed away. He was well into his 90s. And they went through a few temporary ones before they got one that would stick around any longer. He was younger and seemed really interested in the youth of the church, trying to set up youth groups and stuff like that. He got really interested in foster kids and those living in group homes and whatnot in particular. And since my family was heavily involved with the church, that's part of how I got roped into being a server. And I was there a lot, so he took a lot of notice of me. He kept trying to get me to have private Bible rap sessions with him, whatever that meant. And he said he wanted to give me more personal guidance, saying I'd need it since I didn't have the support of a biological family and all that. Something he apparently said to other kids in similar situations. By that time, I'd honed pretty good instincts for people who were off. And this guy sent all my alarm bells ringing. I tried to be polite when in front of anyone else, but I made it absolutely clear to the foster parents at the time that I would absolutely not tolerate being anywhere near him any more than necessary. And there was no way in hell I was going to be alone with him, and I would get violent if I needed to. They knew I meant it, too, from previous incidents, so they never tried to force it. Found out many years later, after I was an adult, from a furry comedian talk show called To the Ranting Griffin, of all places, that the priest who had skeeved me out so much had been arrested for sexual assault at gunpoint of a little boy, and then actually trying to hire someone to kill that child after the kid had told people what happened to him. Apparently, the guy he tried to hire to do the job said he couldn't do it, but he knew someone who could. And he contacted the FBI, who set up a sting with an agent pretending to be someone who was available for hire. And when the priest tried to hire him, he got arrested. The church tried to cover it all up, of course, and I'm pretty sure the church is still there and pretends nothing happened. I don't know what the guy's final sentence was, but whatever it was, I hope he's been torn apart and can never harm anyone ever again. I just wish he'd never gotten the chance to hurt any kid, And knowing that it wasn't me doesn't really bring me any feeling of relief, because I know I would have made an entire Broadway musical out of it, whether people believe me or not. And at the very least, that might have spared other kids experiences that I'd already dealt with anyways. Maybe I would have even had a chance to go for his throats. Who knows? But apparently, my instinct was that he was bad news, no matter how friendly and with it he acted were spot on. That was r/Askreddit, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.